Most teams use Jira Plans to explain why projects are late. But today we are flipping the script. I'm going to show you how to use the scenario mode not as a defensive shield, but as an offensive weapon to change how your company plans, staffs and executes projects. Let's get into the real power of reanalysis, both the common use cases and pro-level insights almost nobody talks about. Let's get started. In Jira Plans, formerly known as Advanced Roadmaps, scenarios are a sandbox feature allowing you to model different versions of a project roadmap without affecting the actual Jira data. Think of it as a what-if engine. You can move dates, change team capacity, or add features in a safe environment to see how these changes affect the timeline before committing them to the live project. Now, by default, the scenarios are disabled in Jira Plans. So first, let's see how to enable them. To enable them, go to the More Actions button next to the name of your plan. In my case, the name of the plan is Scenarios. Select the plan settings and go to Features. Here you will find the toggle to enable the scenarios, the auto scheduler, and releases. As you can see, I have all of them enabled. Once you enable the toggle, I will not disable it because I will lose a scenario that I've already worked on. Once you enable the toggle, the scenarios tab will appear in the side panel. And here you can create new scenarios by simply duplicating the existing ones. So you'll start with an initial scenario and then you can clone whatever you've created so that you don't have to start from the very scratch. So far so good. Let's close this and let's get back to our plan. Now, working with scenarios seems to be straightforward, but in reality it is not that simple. It is a powerful engine that you can use in multiple different ways, and let's have a look at some of the common use cases and try to figure out why they are not enough. We'll start with the best case, worst case, or the myth of 20%. Most worst case scenarios in Jira are basically best case plus 20%. I've already created some examples, so here next to the scenario name you have the drop down with the list of your scenarios, and one of them is worst case or the plus 20%. How to model this plus 20%? Well, you can increase the estimates. That depends of course on the way you're estimating your tasks, whether in story points or in time units, but as I'm using story points, I simply reduce the capacity of the sprint for this particular team. Now the slight change here shows me that the links are not blinking red. Now they would do blink red if I haven't really changed the sprint. So that was the initial scenario, right? And since I reduced the capacity, I had to push this story forward. But once you update the sprint field, this red dependency or the conflict will disappear. Now, when working with scenarios, there is a setting that actually allows you to resolve the conflicts whenever the two stories are within the same sprint. And that's not always the best idea. So let's try to disable this setting. Let's go to the More Actions, Plan Settings, Estimation and Scheduling, and at the very bottom you have this check here: dependent work items can be scheduled to the same iteration. Let's disable this and go back to our timeline. Now you'll see that this link is color-coded red, and that's for a reason. That of course means that one story is blocking the other. Now there can be a whole chain of dependencies, and in Jira Plans you have the Dependencies tab that shows you all the linked items. That's a very important feature, and that's actually taken into account when Jira uses auto scheduling. So instead of doing that manually, you can automatically schedule your tasks, assign them to sprints. The auto scheduling, in that case, you will find the button right here, calculates the new end date based on the actual ranking, dependencies, and capacity. So let's run the auto scheduling and let's see what effect it will have on our timeline. As you can see, the change resulted in multiple items being pushed forward, taking into account the related risks, and right now our release date was not achieved. In a similar way, even a 2-day sleep can result in a significant shift on the timeline. Why is that? That's because of several factors. First of all, it can be the approval lag. When, for example, a task is finished by Wednesday, but it takes another 2 days until the stakeholders review and approve. So to see these cascades before they happen in your plans, look for the red dependency links, check your team's capacity overload, and use the dependency view to analyze the critical path. Another common use case when it comes to using the scenarios is the scope creep. So for example, let's switch to the top level view. Alternatively, you can add the epics to the filter. Right now I'm looking at the hierarchy from the epic to the stories, but by default, when the capacity view is opened, filters here are set from stories to stories. So when you add new epics to the timeline, you simply see that the timeline extends, right? Or you can just extend the original epic. But similarly to the previous example, there's so much more going on, right? So there is a network of dependencies, there are conflicts that need to be resolved, there are the capacity limitations, numerous factors that will change how the timeline looks. So when you add 5 new epics, the number of cross-team dependency triples. Not only does the date move, but the probability of failure skyrockets. This is the kind of evidence that stops the scope creep dead in its tracks. Now that we covered some common examples when it comes to the defensive use of the scenario mode, let's have a look at some pro insights that actually change companies' policy. One approach to using the scenario modes to identify the single points of failure is the sick leave stress test. Now within Jira Plans, it's not that super intuitive because Jira by itself does not really support skills, for example, which other tools available on the market such as Structure, such as BigPicture handle very well, which I will show you at the end of this video. But imagine that in our case Anna falls sick. What happens in that case? Typically teams will simply move the tasks and show a delay. But that might not be the actual problem. If we unassign Anna from the tasks, or where Anna's capacity falls to 0, tasks can pile in an unassigned bucket because no one else has the same skill as Anna. This proves that the issue is not that Anna is sick, but that there is no redundancy for Anna's skill set. This is how you can justify cross-training or hiring. But again, at the end of the video, I will show you a more advanced method when you actually see the list of skills, not just have to conclude based on the bucket of your unassigned tasks. Another example is the context switching tasks, when your resources are shared between projects. And for example, you have a developer that was at 100% in one of the projects and then you decided to move him to another project. Now it is 50-50, but in reality, when someone gets moved to a new project, they are never fully gone. They are split, and split work is slow work. So instead of setting the capacity to 50%, adjust it to 30%. What is the 20%? That's the invisible loss. That's for context switching, and that destroys velocity. This is how you prove that splitting people across projects is a silent productivity killer. Another use case for the scenario modes is the ghost member trick. Now some PPM tools actually allow you to create dummy resources or ghost members within your team to simulate how adding an additional person or people shortens the critical path, shortens the project end date. Now, if you want to learn more and if you haven't really decided yet which tool will work for you best, I do recommend that you watch one of our earlier videos when we compare best Gantt and road mapping tools available for Jira. This includes Jira's timeline, plans, structure Gantt, and some other powerful or top-selling tools available on the market. Some of them do allow you to create ghost members, in other you need a simple workaround and you'll need an account for that. So you can create a dummy account or simply increase the capacity of your team and simulate it using the scenario modes. Don't argue, simulate. Final step would be to compare the cost of 4-week delayed time to market to hiring a new developer. Suddenly, this salary can look cheap. The last idea for using the scenario modes is the post-mortem reconstruction. That can be also called as the black box recorder. You can use the scenario modes as baselines and compare the actual timeline with the original plan. This is your flight recorder. It shows exactly where reality diverged from the plan, scope creep, availability issues, cross-team bottlenecks, and this is the ultimate lesson learned but visualized. So most teams use Jira's scenarios to defend themselves, but now you know how to use them offensively to expose structural issues, justify staffing, and influence policy. Now, when it comes to working with scenarios, different tools provide different capabilities. Jira Plans scenario mode is really powerful. It does allow you to auto schedule, it does allow you to try out multiple different scenarios without limitations. That's also important. And if we just look at the scenarios, it could be your number one pick. But when it comes to working with other tools, there are several differences, not only when it comes to working with the scenarios, but also all the other use cases in which other PPM tools can be much better. Now, one such tool is BigPicture. BigPicture is a PPM tool available for Jira Cloud, Jira Data Center, and you will find tons of videos about this app on our channel. That's because in our opinion, in our client's opinion, this is one, if not the best PPM tool available on the Atlassian's marketplace. Now, when it comes to managing scenarios, it works slightly differently. So you'll start with the live sync mode. Everything is synced live and you can simply enable the scenarios to try out different versions of your timeline. It's worth mentioning that BigPicture offers way more than an advanced scenario mode. So altogether, there are 14 different modules such as the timeline or the Gantt, the scope, the board, objectives, resources, risk management, reports, OKRs, priorities. So it's a complete solution that would address most, if not all, of your use cases. Now, this module, the resources module, is something that all of our clients are interested in, and that's for a reason, because everybody wants to know what is the demand for your resources, what are the bottlenecks when it comes to skill set, for example, when it comes to creating different variations of your timeline, allocating resources to different projects, how they will affect the timelines, and so on and so forth. Now, within BigPicture, one of the main differences is that it actually addresses the use cases that we discussed in the previous part of the videos directly. So besides the teams view, where you'll see what work is assigned to teams, what is their capacity, what is the demand or the workload, this works in story points, in time units, or you can change to percentage view, something that is also very intuitive and you know who's available and where are the bottlenecks. You can switch to the individuals view and see all the team members, whether you can move a person to a different team. This is all here, right? So for example, I know that Eric is overutilized, he needs help, while Anna is available within that date range. All I need to do is check the skill set. How to do that? Well, I can go to the drop down in the top left corner, select the skills, I see the list of my team members, and I have the answer whether I have available skills within my team or do I need to cross-train or hire new team members. Now, there is something else here that I really like. This is quite new. You can further group your resources by skills and, for example, by teams. So we'll know all the teams with a particular skill set. If we revert it, however, we'll know exactly which teams are missing a particular skill set. So again, a lot of information just with a couple of clicks. I will not get into all the details here. The reason for that is we do have a free BigPicture online training that you can attend. So stop struggling with Jira complexity. From PPM tool selection to expert implementation and training, Genius Gecko helps you build a project management environment that actually works. Book your free toolfit consultation today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.